Welcome to the show, ladies and gentlemen. This is Ando's Thinky Time podcast. Today, it's a weird episode, man. I guess that's just how this show's gonna be, man. Probably gonna hear me say and man a lot. Because I got stoned before I recorded this. And that's okay, man. That's just who I am right now. But beyond the marijuana that I've gleefully consumed, I feel like I've taken some kind of strange psychedelic drug. Because it seems like reality is subtly bending to my will, ladies and gentlemen. Because I care about politics, but I don't want to run for politics. I don't think that's my place. And that's okay to do. To not know your place, but I do know mine, and mine is not necessarily in the political realm. But I care about politics because I'm no longer a religious man, and so because I don't believe that there's a God planning things for us and taking care of us, I believe we have to take care of each other. We have to make plans with each other. That's politics. And it is my hope for society that more, let's call them decent people, will get involved in politics. I feel like a lot of times the only people that try and get these jobs are money-hungry or power-hungry assholes. Not everybody that's ever been in politics, but I would even think maybe the majority, a strong 60 to 70%, are in it for the wrong reasons. And one of my hopes for society is that more good folks would get in those jobs, and so I try and interview politicians whenever we get a chance. The sort of influencer folks of society. That's it's an important job. Politics is what I'm trying to say at much labor. Last episode, we had a politician running for Congress, wants to go to Washington and have that experience and try and make a difference at that level. Got to respect that. So had her on. She was a delightful person. Ando's Thinky Time podcast, episode number 1. You can check that out either on patreon.com/The Prairie Scholars, or just look it up on YouTube, or subscribe to the Prairie Scholars podcast and Ando's Thinky Time podcast on iTunes or whatever. Or, you know how to access things on the internet. Jesus, you're listening to this now. My friend Josh Goldberg is the guest today. He's running for city council. The election's coming up directly, sort of at the end of February. It's really important to get involved at the local level, because that's where change starts. And if you love our community, you should take some responsibility for it by educating yourself and getting to know some of the people that are making the decisions that affect how people think of our city. Josh Goldberg's running. He is a great dude. I don't usually endorse politicians. I'll have them on and be kind, but I don't usually outright endorse somebody. This time's a little different. because I happen to know Josh very well. And he is exactly the kind of person that I want to be in politics. You'll get to hear all about who he is. I think he presented himself well here. So enjoy the episode. If you'd like to become a sponsor of this show, which, obviously you've noticed this show doesn't have any sponsors yet. I haven't really opened it up to that. I wanted to see what the fuck we were doing first and get these political episodes out of the way too. If you'd like to become a sponsor of this show, and you should, email me at andy@andyepler.com, or just contact me if we're already friends. Holy crap, just whatever, contact me, let me know. We'll work something out. I'd be happy to endorse local companies, just like we do for the Prairie Scholars podcast. So this is episode number 2 of Ando's Thinky Time podcast. I hope you enjoy it, man. I hope you do. I hope you dig it, man. I hope you have a great day. Thank you for listening to my little show. Just start recording. There's a fucking Buddha hanging out in the backyard, and he's welcome to hang out back there because he's not a real preachy dude,
He's pretty quiet. Sits in the corner.
Hanging the fuck out. Yeah,
makes things a little bit better sitting in his own little spot.
Yeah, I put a little painted rock in his lap. He seems real happy with it. I'd put a Jesus back there too if he didn't seem like he was pointing at anybody or whatever. He just thumbs up, Jesus.
Looking
buddy
a little too hard at me.
Well, Buddy Christ action. I'd go for that. You remember him?
I do.
Thank you for coming on my little podcast.
It's my pleasure.
I had you on the Prairie Scholars podcast a long time ago.
It was one of the honors of my life.
I'm glad that we both remember it so fondly. You're back because, as I predicted many years ago, people want to hand you power in the city. You are now running for city council.
Dun dun.
Which is good. And we had.
I don't know if people want to hand me power, but I'm gonna do my best to inspire and get the community to support, which will translate to some power, which is of course what we're not all in it for.
No, you're in it for to help because you're a helper.
Exactly.
You've always shown that. And everybody's always known that about you. Ever since I came to the community in 2007, I toured through here, and I got a gig at Left Hand. And that was back when the music used to happen where basically the trash cans are now. Right
up against the garage, right up against the move-up door. Is that where it is?
No, it was before that even. I think my first time I played...
Was it like in a little nook?
In the nook beside the bar.
Yeah.
Like across from the bar.
Oh, yes.
That little nook is.
Mm-hmm. That was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago.
Yeah.
And I came in and I met you... And you were so personable.
Thanks.
You made me feel like a real person.
Mm-hmm.
I had been on tour for weeks at that point by myself, sleeping in the car and all this, and dealing with bar owners. It's a dark world out there, Josh. And when I came into Left Hand, I was kind of half expecting to be treated like I had been treated at some of these other places in New Mexico, and kind of like, oh, here's the fucking noise guy. Here you go, noise guy. Go over there in the corner and be noisy, you bitch. And and that's kind of how I was treated, which is fair because I was a heavy drinker kind of back then. But when I showed up to Left Hand, I felt so welcomed, and you were so friendly to me.
Thank you.
Yeah,
yes.
Well, thank you.
We have been doing our best for. Well, I joined the brewery in April of 2007. So
this would have been in July.
Yeah, so I was fresh, young. I wasn't jaded yet. Clearly it was only a year later when you came back that I was jaded and I didn't answer phone calls. It's over there, plug it in, and don't be too loud.
He had a scar across his neck.
Once I joined the Left Hand family there in the tasting room, it was my mission to make that place cheers. Mm-hmm. Cheers, to make it a place where you know everyone's name, to make it Longmont's living room, to make it the place, the gathering place, of all types of folks. Mm-hmm. And it had great roots, the Eric and Chintzia and Dick and the leadership of Left Hand beforehand. I think we're already down that path. I just happened to be the guy with a big smile behind the bar that, that was there day in and day out trying to nurture that. And, I think we did some really cool things, during my tenure behind the bar, and making it warm and welcome, and doing our best to remember names, and remembering what beer you want, and maybe even have it on the bar before you sat down. It was all part of, what I think is building community.
See, that's what I recognized about it when I came into that place. I had never seen, because you were the bar manager, right? That was your gig.
Bartender, right? At the time. Oh man, I was just a bartender.
Just pour the beers, surge, shut the
fuck. Yeah, I hope I know the right code to charge you.
I had never thought of a bartender as a community leader. But when I met you, I realized, no, this person deals with people all the time, every day. And if he deals with them shitty way, they don't come back to the brewery. If he deals with them nicely, they come, they make friends with each other. You're introducing chiefs, you're being kind of this connective tissue.
Yeah.
I found that to be very inspiring. And then when I came back in, I think a few months later probably, and maybe in 2008, maybe before, I was surprised that you totally remembered my name. Mm-hmm. And I didn't remember your name, because I'll
never forget that you didn't remember my name.
That burned my ass for years. Yeah, I was really amazed. You were like, "Oh, hey Andy, how you been?" I was like, "Holy shit, mister. I remember your face and liking you, but I don't remember your name."
Yeah, and then I asked you to play one song. I've only requested one song in my life. And at the ripe old age of, what were you at the time? 25
maybe, yeah.
At the ripe old age of 25, you had retired a song. You responded to my gentle query, my polite request for one song, and you said, "No, Josh, I've retired that song." And I was like, "You're 25, you can't retire a song yet." But you did, and
yeah, I did, man.
And that's fine.
There's a song called C sharp minor.
That's right. That's right.
Okay, yeah. I wrote that song with my buddy back when I was 16 years old.
So you'd already been playing it for 10 years?
Yeah.
Okay. Although I think Billy Joel's still playing Piano Man, and it's probably been 50 years.
Piano Man and Billy Joel, Josh. I mean, he got paid more for the studio session than I ever made off that song. You know what I mean?
Anyways,
I'm not a proud man, but I do get tired of my art.
Right.
So I think
watercolors.
Yeah. Oh my God! Don't get me started on the watercolor thing. What a mess. If you're, listener, if you
look around the room where we're sitting, there's a lot of wonderful watercolor.
Looks like
art in development,
and kind of a chemical spill.
Andy's growing his skill in the art of watercolor.
I'm attempting. Well, when I saw you back then, I really did know, this is a person that, is worth paying attention to. Not like the other monkeys. And so I'm not surprised that, A, you are interested in running for city council, but B, I'm not surprised that there's so many people around us that seem to be interested in that too. You seem to have a lot of support. Do you?
I hope so. My story is a little bit different than most, and certainly different from my opponent in that my story is a Longmont story. Mm-hmm. I moved here from New York City. Before that, Highlands Ranch, and before that, San Diego. But when we landed, my wife and I, Wendy and I, landed in Longmont, there was something just special. And a lot of it I tie back to the tasting room and the space behind the stone bar and the guests on the other side. So, what makes that place special is the folks who frequent and come to Left Hand. And those are the very folks who have inspired me to want to be good, to want to, elevate our town, to want to contribute to the Longmont story. Mm-hmm. And so, we have just the most wonderful, hardworking moms and dads and young adults that just want to, have good discussions and want to contribute, and wonderful artists. And we have politicians and nonprofit leaders and police officers and local engineers and everything in between, all rallying at this place called the Left Hand Tasting Room. And there's no TVs to distract us. There's no sports games. There's no loud, jukebox. It's mostly about creating this sense of community. And So as a result of being the guy slinging beers with the right personality, I couldn't help but want to become a bigger part of that.
Yeah.
And so first it was try to help make a great experience inside that tasting room. And then kind of the way I looked at it was, but what if my tasting room didn't end within the four walls of the brewery?
Yeah.
What if my tasting room became community-wide or something further one day? Mm-hmm. And so I saw Longmont as, my tasting room. And what do I want to do? Well, I want to contribute. I want to get involved. And in the earliest times, there was this program that the Longmont Area Chamber of Commerce puts on called Leadership Longmont.
Oh, yeah.
It's really cool. It's 6 months or so, one session a month, and you go from kind of pillar of our community to pillar of our community. So one class is dedicated to government, one to education, one to media, one to healthcare. And you hear from the leaders of those pillars of that infrastructure.
Interesting.
So you're in the same room as the superintendent, and he's telling you about the challenges and the successes of the school district. And then you're sitting in with city council, and they're telling you the challenges and the experience of being part of the leadership of our town. And then you're at the hospital, and Mitch Carson, the director at the time, was giving us a private tour around the hospital, and you just get this kind of wholesome, full picture of what it takes to run a town. Yeah. And it's just wildly inspiring.
Yes.
And so, as a result of my time there, I gained what I guess I'll call confidence to jump aboard a committee called the Public Policy Committee. That's also put on by the Chamber. I remember showing up at my first Public Policy Committee meeting. I didn't know better. I had just moved from New York City, and in New York City, when you go to a meeting, you put on a black or dark gray suit. You put on a shirt that looks like it came out of your father's closet.
Yeah.
And you tie a tie around your neck, and you put on some shiny shoes, and you head over to the meeting. And I did exactly that. And I walked into my first Chamber of Commerce meeting, and I looked around, and there was a bunch of, old white dudes with white hair, with khaki and earth tones, and kind of fuzzy, pillowy sweaters. And I was like, man,
one of these guys chauffeur.
I gotta do a better job fitting into this town.
I look like I'm an assassin here to kill one of these guys.
So I take off my jacket, loosen my tie, and for the next couple meetings, just listen.
That's one thing you're gonna have to master as a politician is the casual sleeve roll up normal guy thing.
Yes.
Like with the hands, you got to gesture with your hands a lot. You got to roll your sleeves up. You got to loosen that tie. You're like, fellas, let me tell you something.
Let's get to business.
Yeah. Let me tell you, let's get some real work done today for America. That kind of shit, man.
Yeah.
I would love that.
So yeah, I jumped aboard this Public Policy Committee. I didn't know anything about public policy. I don't know why I was sitting in a room full of business owners and people who are smarter than me, folks who've been a part of the Longmont story longer than me. But before I could ever, vocalize or say what my role was, I quickly discovered what my role was, and that was my first role was to challenge norms. And so that was when you get a bunch of folks who've been sitting in the same meeting at 8 a.m. on Friday mornings for the last number of years, they all start to think the same, act the same, and it just becomes a little bit of a routine.
That's very
Ask
natural.
the same questions.
Tribe mentality, herd mentality.
Right.
Humans are herd animals.
Right. I believe you on that.
I think that's true.
And so it seemed like my job was, hey, not even to disagree, but just to make sure we've asked ourselves all the tough questions before we move forward with a recommendation to approve a minimum wage hike or to deny a minimum wage hike or to do something that's going to impact our town. So the first thing I was doing was challenging norms, but in a respectful way. I didn't come in with a big stick and drop it on the table.
Fuck yeah.
When you do that, you don't get... It's just not productive. You don't get the respect. that you need to have a robust discussion.
It's not a very respectful thing to do.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
So there you go. You got to be respectful if you want respect.
Amen.
That's it.
So never like flaunting or imparting judgment. What about this? Hey, we haven't talked about it from this perspective. Hey, next time we should hear from the opposition, not just the one in favor of this project.
Yeah.
And so, whether on the public policy committee or on the variety of other nonprofit boards I've served on, that has become my role. Not to be the smartest guy in the room, but to be the one who says, let's make sure we've considered all options, and then maybe be the last voice at the end of the discussion. All right, so what I've heard is Andy thinks that Jesus is looking at him a little too hard.
Yeah.
And Josh thinks that Jesus has a little ADD and he's looking over there. Well, let's talk about what we can do to bring it together, and how can we get Jesus in the right spot in the garden.
Yeah.
Maybe it's next to Buddha.
He's just a statue.
Right.
It's not his fault.
Right, it's not his fault. Maybe we give him a little visor or something.
Yeah, that's it.
So, finding that common ground where we can move forward together. Because otherwise, we might get stuck.
Yeah, right.
And I've seen that along the way. And I think that ability to poke and challenge, but respectfully, stemmed from having 10 different men or women sitting at the bar and, almost a little mischievously bringing up politics.
Yeah.
As the bartender, you can kind of direct the conversation.
Yeah, a little bit.
And I'll be like, hey, Tom, what do you think about this thing? And at the time, it might have been Obama might have been in office, and then, but Bill over here completely disagrees. And,
Sure.
Kind of almost like a conductor, orchestrate a conversation.
Yeah.
And keep it within the lines.
Heats up a little bit.
Yeah, it's like
cool it down.
fine to make a little joke.
That's it.
And that's kind of what my story has been.
That's a really important role to play in a group of people, I find.
Thank you. Yeah, I agree. So we wrapped up I've been with the Chamber of Commerce now for the better part of 6 years. Public Policy Committee, then the board. I served a term on the Visitors Association. This is something that I think you would be fantastic at, in that there are different players in our town that impact tourism, and certainly the arts is one of those. Craft beer, wonderful food, the hotel industry. These are the folks who you find on tourism bureau boards, and so served with a bunch of smarter folks than me on that board, but brought a different skill set, and then eventually joined the Planning and Zoning Commission.
All the smartest people I've ever known personally make it a point to try and surround themselves with people that they perceive as being smarter than they are.
For sure.
So
Yeah.
that's how I think of being smart. I want to be around the people. I want to play with people that are better than me, because it's going to make me better.
Right.
I'm always in a learning mode. That way I can be in sort of a teaching mode too. As an artist anyway.
Yeah, I hear you. One day I walked into the office at Left Hand, and I was having trouble with a goal or a deadline, and my boss was kind of digging into me, and I said, well, I tell you what, this office is my grounding. And she's like, what do you mean? And I said, boy, out in the world, I'm respected and loved, and my perspective is taken with some sincerity. Yeah. And then I sit down in this office, and you'd just drive into me. Yeah. But I think it is exactly that: is that we are better because we are chronically challenged.
Yes.
And as soon as someone stops caring to challenge you, then we settle and we become complacent and stop progressing.
I think that's very wise. Yes, I think that's true. Now,
I don't know if anyone's ever called me wise, Andy.
Well, take it just with a grain of salt from the source, you know what I'm saying? It's all a perspective question, Josh. I'm excited for you to, even if you were to drop out of the race, I'm excited that you were interested in it at all. I like the idea of someone like you, getting into local politics. You're, to me, the ideal person to get involved in politics.
Thank you.
I don't consider you the politicking type, really. But you are definitely.
But wouldn't we be better
worker.
if we had more non-politicking types
That's what
in
I'm
politics?
Saying. Right. I don't consider you as like a super safe, careful politicking motherfucker. I consider you to be a community activist.
Thank you.
And that's who we need in politics. I'm proud that you're interested in it.
Thank you. Just yesterday I was saying to someone, and when you're campaigning, you don't want to ever reveal the possibility of you not winning, right?
yeah.
But I said to someone, if I had to stop today, if I lost, if something happened and I had to bow out, like, even the experiences I've had in the last, it's really only been like 3 weeks since the day I announced, I have already gained so much more than I'll ever be able to give back to the city.
Well, you realize how many people around you are interested in this idea of you having a position like this.
Well, that is just ridiculously humbling. But in my efforts to become a competent, worthy server of our town, I have, sat in the offices of the people we respect, and that has just led to the most wonderful and rich and dynamic conversations that I wouldn't have had if I didn't kind of say, well, I'm in. Whether it's our chief of police or our city manager or previous mayors or just business owners that I had never connected with. And then, of course, answering tough questions from those you don't know, but throw them at you, at the end of a forum.
Yeah.
If something were to change and I couldn't proceed after today, I still have gained so much. It's just humbling at every stoplight. Yesterday I had this daunting list of 50 homes I had to hit with my campaign signs.
Oh yeah.
And every time I thought, oh man, I got 22 more to go, I thought, how dare you? Yeah. You're so lucky that you have to hit 22 more homes of people who have given them your faith and their faith and their trust and believe in you to help keep this town going in the right direction.
That's not nothing.
And it's silly. It's silly, and it's a little bit. It is unendingly humbling, and all you want to do is do a good job.
Just think the people around you know what you are, and I think what that is a very active, very effective person in our community that. We can point to a lot of success and a lot of, positive outcomes from your actions over the years.
Yep.
And that's shit that we can quantify. You know what I mean?
Thanks.
Raise this much money for charity through working with this number of people, or help this number of groups, or put on these events, or whatever. Even if we were just measuring it in joy that you've caused. And that's not to be overlooked, and I think it often is when you're judging a person. The amount of joy that you've flooded into our community is worthy of a lot of respect. And that's why I think a lot of people know who you are and respect what you are. And I believe that now that you've revealed a willingness to serve our community in this way in politics, which is a way I'm not willing to serve our community.
Although a few folks have asked.
Yeah, well, but that's a joke, I think. I don't think anybody really wants Ando to have some kind of gavel situation. Not my role. But similar to how you think of our community, I feel the same way. And so I think you and I have a lot of the same goals, and we understand the groundwork of what it is to run a small business in this community.
Right.
Also, it seems to me an important time to have somebody from the brewing world on city council in Longmont. It seems like it's time for that. How many breweries do we have?
I think we're at about 10.
I don't know.
10, 2 cideries.
If we count.
What do we have? More than that?
No, I think we have more than that because there's Open Door.
Oh, that's true. And Primitive is about to open too.
And I don't know if Niwot counts as Longmont. Maybe it doesn't.
It doesn't, but
that's just right there. You know what I mean? And so even if it were just 10 in Longmont, that's a lot. That's a lot of breweries.
I'm not so quick to think that someone's industry or professional background is critical to a seat on council, but no doubt the craft beer industry has
a useful knowledge
grown.
Base to have that nobody else on council is coming from. They don't know the logistics of if they try and make some new ordinance about how people dispose of spent grain or what the fuck ever. nobody else has anything to say about that because they don't know anything about that.
Sure.
Now we have somebody on council. It's like, well, actually, there are like 10 big businesses in our country, in our city, that really bring a lot of business, and they have jobs, and they support a whole community of artists or whatever. That's really gonna fuck them over, and if we fuck them over, we're not just fucking them, because you understand the chain of the economic dominoes that fall after a while.
Right.
It's also my opinion, in the next couple of years, knock on wood, I suspect we're going to have an economic downturn. That's a real possibility. These things seem like they're cyclical. It seems like we're overdue for one.
Sure.
And I know that the markets are volatile all the time, but like, it seems to me it's time for a classic fuck up. So it's important that we have people that understand the real functionality of our community from different perspectives.
Right.
And the brewery perspective is a really important one, especially for Longmont branding. We're Brewmont, man.
I've never heard it called
No,
that
really?
before.
Long Tucky,
That's funny.
Brewmont.
I've definitely had Long Tucky.
Yeah.
I think you're touching on something important, and that is, first of all, we need to be sensitive and aware and hyper-vigilant to the economic development within our town, and make sure that we are waving the flag that Longmont is open for business, and make sure we're providing the infrastructure necessary to bring in good businesses with good jobs that will help our town survive and rise above the next downturn.
It's all about responsible growth at this point.
Exactly.
Because if we grow too big for our britches, man, it's gonna be bad.
We've got a lot of pressure. As Boulder is capped out. We're seeing a lot of folks coming into our town with a variety of needs. We're young adults to senior citizens. I think what we're going to see here in the next 10 or 20 years is going to be a very large increase in senior citizens, baby boomers who are aging, and so we'll have to be sensitive to the services, making sure we have services available for folks who can't get around as easy.
Yep.
Make sure that we have transportation that can bring folks, whether they're older folks or those who are less privileged or on a leaner income, to be able to get around our town, get to work.
Still participate.
We want people to be able to, we want our workers to be able to live in Longmont.
Yeah.
And I don't know about what you've seen with the value of your home, but I bought in 2006 and then watched the value of my house plummet, because that was the last bubble.
Oh, yep.
Right? And so the economy tanked. Bought a home, watching her plummet by tens of thousands of dollars in value, and now where are we at? Now our homes are higher than ever, and we're still the most affordable neighborhood and city in Boulder County, but that doesn't make us accessible and affordable for everyone.
Yeah.
And if you're a police officer or a firefighter, or if you're Ando, or if you're someone working at the city office or a bartender at Left Hand, it's becoming really, really hard to be able to afford to live here.
That's right, man. If we get priced out, we lose a lot of the ground that we've gained. If let's say, artists can't afford to pay rent here anymore, Birth It or whatever is going to have a great arts community in a couple of years.
Exactly.
We're going to lose.
You're not going to commute in for your art.
I mean, I do. I commute everywhere. I'll play in any corner on the.
No, I don't think so. Yeah, I think we'll start losing what has helped make us to be as vibrant and robust and delicious as we are now. Yeah,
people love what is made here. That's one thing that Longmont really has over other communities, is we're proud of the product that gets made here. So that's why
what a funny transition it's been.
Yes.
And we, when I moved in, it was, and probably when you moved in too, Longmont was, at least at the time, it was Long Tucky, as you've already suggested.
Yep.
It was the place where people could live if they couldn't afford Boulder. And now we walk around with shirts on that say Longmont versus everybody, and I think there's this energy and pride that comes with our town now. And to your point, we don't want to lose that. And a lot of that is homegrown. It's organic. It's artists. It's food. It's culture.
It's not free.
And it's not free.
It's not free. Like there have to be jobs associated with those things. Like in my world, the arts economy is something that a lot of the artists in town have worked together to build, because we recognize that if we want those jobs, we have to create them. We have to create a place where those make sense,
Yes.
you know. But if that shit goes away, I don't know. Like Longmont could go right back to. They might as well have a goddamn turkey plant. You know what I mean? If we're gonna lose all that kind of shit, but it's not free for society. You know, somewhere along the line, somebody has to make the investment. You know what I mean?
Yep.
Now, I prefer to make the investment through benefit of collaboration.
Oh, wow.
You make more money when I'm working with you. That's why you want to work with me, you know. And that's what I think a lot of the music has done in town, is it's kind of been like a little extra gasoline in the engine of these businesses.
Yeah.
You know?
Whether it's restaurants or tasting rooms or art galleries, what have you.
Right. But it's one of those things where, like, if city council, for instance, decided to tax breweries $1,000,000% or what the
Sure.
fuck ever,
Sure.
an amount that made a difference to them, one of the things they might have to cut is how much they pay musicians
Sure.
or how often they do music.
Amen.
Right? That's how, like, one little change over here really affects the larger economy, especially with the arts. We're such a strange economy. We're based on novelty,
Disposable
mostly.
income?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. We live off of people's tips, and we live off of people coming out to buy beers, and, you know.
You know, my first career was for 10 years in the veterinary field. My wife's a veterinarian.
That's right.
And I was a veterinary nurse forever. That's how we met. And I wouldn't change a thing, because now I'm here in Colorado with a beautiful family and doing what I love to do.
Making out over dead dogs and stuff like that.
No. No, Ando. But, you know, that business is dependent upon disposable income. You know, you got to feed your kid first, you know, yourself and your kid, and pay rent before you can give the dog his vaccines.
Of course.
Right?
Yeah,
And then we slide over into the craft beer industry. And that industry, to your point, perhaps just like art, is dependent upon a healthy economy where people have an extra buck or two to go buy a craft beer, not a, you know, Coors Light that's on happy hour for $1 down the road.
Right.
And so the vibrance of that industry, art or beer, I think, is dependent upon a healthy, rich, robust economy.
Yeah. I just wonder about that stuff. I don't mean to, you know, cast a bunch of negativity into the future about it. I'm just, you know, whenever I get a chance to talk to somebody who's going to be, you're already a decision maker in our community. You're very influential in our community. And that's something I really believe in, is I like to connect with effective people.
Mm-hmm.
That's the kind of person I respect. And that's why I'm
I hope your next interview is better than this.
No, there won't be. It'll be worse.
Did you get Chief Butler for the next one?
Yeah. Butler's a good dude.
I agree.
I
agree.
I did an interview with him once already, actually. I was
hopefully by your own choosing, not by force.
Yeah, you definitely want to be on this side of the interview.
That's right.
With the police. But I was writing for this website. It was like one of these local websites that's been opening up over the past few years. They'll have like a new one that's like, oh, the Longmont news or whatever. Then they'll go away, and then these new people started up and they wanted to pay me to write articles. I was like,
awesome.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
So I wanted to write an article about how the local police aren't just killing motherfuckers.
Right.
And, you know, you hear all these bad stories about police all
Sure.
over the country. Not our guys. Our guys aren't doing that shit.
You know what they do?
That's a story.
You know what he does on Sunday mornings? He walks the neighborhoods.
Yeah, that's right.
He and maybe the city manager, or he and another couple folks, a gentleman named Dan Benavides. Thank you. I'm switching my B's and my D's.
Mm-hmm.
They'll walk the town. They'll walk the neighborhoods and break down those borders and break down those perceptions of what police are.
Yeah.
And what their role is in town.
He's super nice.
And knock on doors and you know, see what they can be doing better, and sometimes asking our neighborhoods, and especially our lower income neighborhoods, to be accountable too. What are you doing to serve your town?
Yeah, man.
Not just, you know, what can we do for you? He left me with some words that after I was able to sit in his office for just hey, I'm running for office. What are some things I should know, and help me look at this town through your lens?
Yeah, man.
And he said his final words were, I want you to look at Longmont as a bundle of opportunities, not as a bunch of problems.
Yeah.
And that's exactly
the kind of fucking
how
guy, right?
it's exactly how I feel. I've since announcing, I've been at a forum at the library. I have been asked some tough questions by members of the of town. I've met with those who are hyper involved in politics, which is not always the right demographic to be chatting with about making change. But folks say, what's the first thing you're going to do to fix this town? The reporter, what makes you a good candidate? And I said, whoa, I never said I was a good candidate, but we'll talk about that later. How about, what are you going to fix? And I'm like, I'm not sure I'm here to fix anything.
Yeah.
I'm here to keep us on the right track. I love the direction that our town's going. I have been honored to be a part of that story, and I can't wait to contribute further. I don't see us as a list of problems. We have some things that we have to work on. We're still rebuilding after the flood along the St. Vrain corridor. We still have yet to see what's coming of, to the final realization of fast tracks and RTD, and, what are we doing to increase healthy transportation around town. Yeah, that darn mall isn't loaded with a bunch of retail options like we all envisioned it would be. What is the role of our government in helping nurture that out? We have some big issues with securing water for the future and having accessible housing for everyone in town. But I don't see us as a bunch of problems. I see us as a bunch of opportunities to help make this town a little bit better for Andy and for my kids and for my kids' kids, So.
I think when I think of you and I think of your skill set, one of the things that I know is going to be one of the first things that you're really doing when you go to the office is you'll start listening because you digest information well. And so I believe one of the skill sets that you'll be using most is your active listening.
Oh, thank you.
But I've seen you use that in the past. I believe that you have that skill set, and maybe better than some other politicians that I know around here.
Well, I'm very flattered to hear that. I do think that's important. I was in this room at the library. It was a forum put on by the Longmont area Democrats. Well, that should ring close to home. I've been a registered Democrat since I could vote.
I'm a registered independent, of course.
And well, listen,
I don't team up, motherfucker.
I'm not I'm nervous because I want to represent myself well, and I want to inspire those in the room to see that I could be the next, the one next step on that council to help our town grow in the right direction. But I wasn't nervous. I didn't think it was going to be hostile or unhealthy or weird. But I show up to the library. I walk in the room and I instantly realize that I am the Red Sox in Yankee Stadium.
Oh shit!
And what it was clear was that I just wasn't progressive enough.
Oh really?
Yeah, and I have some friends who will say, "What? You sure, Josh?" And that's true. I think how I differ from I have two folks that I'm running against, and one of them is backed by the Longmont area Dems. And where I differ between that gentleman is my experience here in town, serving on planning and zoning and in the Chamber of Commerce. Sitting at these boardrooms with people that I respect and admire, you learn that a hardline progressive or a hardline conservative stance is never the right answer, actually.
Because they've stopped digesting information fairly.
They're looking through, reading analytics through a skewed lens, listening to testimony through a skewed lens, And so when you have a hardline progressive or hardline conservatives, I don't think the solution that's pro Longmont in the end is ever either one. It's always being able to bring together, taking the gems out of that side and the gems out of the right side and bring them together and see what's functional and good and, productive for our town.
See, that's exactly what I would want you to say, dude. I just feel like the future of America is not who won the battle between the left and right. It's how did we find out where the fucking middle was. Hello?
Right.
The fucking middle!
Right.
That's where most people are,
Well, that's... I'm glad to hear you say that. I see you as a innovative, influential, voice of our town. But in that particular room, just as an example, and I'm sure I'll be in other scenarios, a balanced, consensus building decision isn't popular. Maybe that room wanted to hear me say sanctuary city or bust. We should provide affordable housing for all, regardless of impact on businesses or rates or what have you. Maybe we should never have opportunities. We should not be open for variances or development along our river corridor. That there's never the opportunity to consider that. Once you start saying never, you start closing the doors on opportunities.
You stop thinking about it.
Right. You stop. Right. No, I have this thing. I am never going to allow development or something that the other side wants, and then you stop becoming a valuable contributing member of that boardroom.
Yeah. Once you stop thinking, you've stopped helping.
Right.
That's how I consider it. And I think the most noble thing a person can do is hear new information that is true and change their view that was wrong.
Right.
If you can do that, I consider you a very noble person. If you can't do that, you're not playing fairly the game of information.
Let me give you an example of something that it's the most exciting and energizing in moments in my career serving our town. So I sit on planning and zoning, and in planning and zoning, you're making decisions on where projects go, how dense they are, how tall they are, whether to approve it, whether to let a project happen or not. And as a result, we are burdened with receiving information from the experts, from staff, and the experts and consultants that are involved. We have to, and we're obliged to, hear from the residents who are about to be impacted by a decision you're making. And then we have to have a robust discussion as commissioners based on the information that we all know. And some of the most humbling but also rewarding times are you walk into the room, you sit behind the dais, you instantly feel less like you're not important. You just have a mission to do. You are here to serve.
Yes.
Take off the me hat, and you hear the discussion from the staff. You hear the discussion from the party that wants this. And then you hear the public say no. We don't want this. I don't want this project next to my neighborhood. I don't want to have obstructed views of the mountains.
Sure.
I don't want to have this change. And then we question and ask, and seek out more information, and then discuss as a commission and make a decision. And some of the most rewarding experiences are when you walk in thinking thinking that you're going to support a particular motion, but testimony, feedback, the public have all played a role in helping you see a different light.
Yes.
And that is like when you kind of rise above you.
It feels so good.
And you just become part of something bigger. Now you are part of the Longmont story for generations to come.
Right. I love to be convinced of things. That's one thing I just cherish in the world. That's why I always engage about politics and religion. Right. I'm looking for somebody to talk me into some shit. I love to be talked into shit because I want to know the higher truth. Yeah. I want to have access to that truth that I don't currently have or that I think I have. I love that part of it, and I'm glad to hear that your opinion of it is similar.
Now the kind of the misunderstood side of that story is. When you're sitting behind the dais there, you also are confined to a list of review criteria. Meaning, no matter what your personal interest is, you can't use that that into consideration. You have a list. Sometimes it's only a few criteria, and sometimes it's multiple pages long. We get these 100-page packets that we review, and when push comes to shove, you might have from, item 2017-45A to L.
Yeah.
And so no matter how much you don't want to negatively impact the neighbors who are here pleading to you not to do it, no matter how much you don't want, in your heart maybe you think we shouldn't allow a project to occur. When you're hitting the review criteria, and if all the checks are there, sometimes, and it's hard, but it's the right thing to do. Sometimes you have to hit the little button on your microphone, wait your turn to speak, and look out in the audience and thank every one of them. And a good commissioner writes down their names, and tracks exactly what their concerns are, and look them in the eye and say, we've heard every one of you, and we know, and I know. But based on our review criteria, we just can't tell developer Tim that he can't build there. I know this is frustrating for you, and I don't want this for you, but we have an obligation to respect the law, and we have an obligation to serve and respect everyone's role in that part in that story. And so that has led to some decisions on my behalf when I've had to, say, hey, I'm really sorry, and I know this is not what you wanted, and I applaud you for coming in. This is democracy in action. But I don't have a good reason to deny this project.
Yeah.
And that is the most humbling moment, when you have to say no to people. I've seen people in the audience that I work with, my neighbors maybe, and the next day at the office, you're getting dirty looks from your coworker. But all that you can do is at the end of the day say, well, I respected the law, and I know that you can't see that.
Yeah.
Because the driveway is next to yours.
They didn't read the 100-page thing either,
But when push comes to shove, the formula that the school district provided said the schools could be accommodated. The traffic study said that it's not triggering a problem. The utilities said they could provide the utilities. And in the end, they're providing something we need. Maybe it's a portion of their units are affordable. Gosh darn it, I can't decline a project if it meets the quota. And that's a hard thing to explain.
Yeah, but obviously you're a good communicator, and I think that's one thing that has carried Brian Bagley as well. He's a very effective communicator. And I believe that's why he's sitting in the seat he's in right now, because he's a very effective communicator. I don't agree with Brian on everything, but I sure do like him.
Sure.
When I first met Brian Bagley, I'll tell a quick story.
He's our mayor. He deserves as quick as you want.
Yeah.
Brian's
I went
man.
to a coffee with the council because I was starting to get curious about local politics. I wanted to see who smelled like bullshit.
Right.
That's because in Texas...
You can smell it?
Yeah, dude. Allegedly crooked is how I have to say it. But yeah, crooked as fuck, I think.
Sure.
In Texas. And I would write songs about the mayor and stuff, get in the newspaper about it. But I wanted to see if... Yeah. I didn't look into it in Longmont because I didn't want to open up that diaper and be like, oh, there's turds in here. Yeah. Oh, no. But I opened it up and it was like, here's this Republican guy. At the time he was Republican, now he's an independent, but who is so against letting marijuana come into our city limits and whatever. And I pulled him aside after that. We talked for a little while and shook hands and kind of agreed to disagree, but felt like almost got through to him a little bit and was like, I'm a reasonable person, you're a reasonable person. Let's go get a sandwich sometime and talk about weed, And so that's, he was almost my gateway into getting involved again in local politics. But since then, we've talked to, Jonathan Singer, who's working in Denver. Jonathan, right?
What a great man.
That motherfucker is the coolest. Dude, listener, if you would like to know about a cool motherfucker, look up Jonathan Singer. He's at the Colorado House of Representatives, I guess. He's got a pair of glasses. Nice looking guy.
And a very long list of issues he's trying to fix, to address.
And a list of shit he has fixed.
Amen. Yeah.
Which that's the kind of guys we like, right?
Regardless of your party.
Lists.
Yeah, regardless of your party affiliation. And I'm sure there are conservative members, I could probably list a few, where I would be equally inspired by. Mm-hmm. But Jonathan, Democrat or not, this guy cares about his district, is passionate about his constituents.
Yeah.
He's answered his phone on my behalf, on the brewery's behalf, gone out of his way to make himself accessible. And serve, man.
It's a good example of what a modern politician can be.
I agree.
Let me get this cat out of here before he starts trying to drink people's water. Beat it, Red. Christ. Red likes to pop in toward the end of the interview just to see if everything went okay. Seems like at some point in these podcasts, everybody has to meet this cat.
What's up, Red?
He bothered Karen McCormick pretty extensively. She used to be a veterinarian as well. She's a doctor.
That's true.
I guess she is a veterinarian.
There's actually two people running for state office that are veterinarians in Colorado right now.
Really?
She's one of them, and the other one is a gentleman who comes from kind of the Eastern Plains, not Sterling, somewhere on the Eastern Flats, and he's out, and he's a large animal vet, and he's here to represent a very large district.
I've got an idea.
I'm ready.
This is an idea for an event, and we may not want to do this. It's an event where we get you guys together, the candidates that have nursing experience with animals.
Yes.
And we get everybody in the room to sign a thing that promises to vote a certain way based on the outcome.
Whoa.
Of a competition.
Okay, and what is the competition?
Everybody gets a hurt dog.
Yes.
And you have to fix the dog. The first guy to fix the dog, automatically elected. That's a great idea.
I love it, man.
I don't know how legal that is or whatever. I'm not sure you can get people to sign.
Speaking of legal and what Jonathan has worked hard for, I think we've seen some changes come out of DC recently, out of Mr. Sessions specifically, as to the priorities of marijuana.
Yeah, they're going to try that.
Yeah, what do you think about them?
I don't think they have a fucking prayer. I think, like, cowboys in Texas are rubbing CBD oil on their joints.
Yeah.
It's over. It's fucking over. Okay. And all these farmers in America are starting to smell the money and shit. It's fucking over. You know, more than half of the states either have recreational or medical, right? So it's like, it's over, dude. Just grow up about it. It's time to grow up. Sorry. Nixon made it illegal to put dudes like me in jail, you know? So, like, you know.
Back to Chief Butler. I was sitting in his office and I asked him what's his take on marijuana. What's his personal take? And he said, Josh, we haven't seen an uptick in accidents related to marijuana use since we legalized. He said, we haven't seen an increase in crime related to marijuana. And he said, actually, you know what? The number one contributor to traffic accidents in our town is? And I was afraid because sometimes beer is high up on that list. And he said, nope, it's not marijuana, Josh. It's not beer. It's actually distracted drivers. It's checking your iPhone while you're driving.
That's it, dude. But that's all going to get fixed. The cars are going to drive themselves soon, but...
I think I just saw something on the Westward that says that we're in the final runnings for this, what's the pod? The, like, hyperspeed pod thing.
Not light rail.
No, it's like Time Machines. No, but it's with the dude from Tesla backing it.
Oh my god!
And it's these high-speed pods that travel up and down the I-70 corridor.
Oh, that's right.
In minutes, traveling at airplane speed.
That's
and I think Colorado, specifically with a partnership with CDOT, just became one step closer to being one of the test cities for that.
Wow, man!
Yeah, man.
I know in Las Vegas they got like buses that drive themselves and shit like that.
Really?
Yeah. Self-driving bus, self-driving cars are already a thing, but they're getting proliferated more and more. I think like if you're looking to just save lives in our country, It's not, you don't have to worry about guns. You don't have to worry about terrorism. None of that shit factors in at all compared to accidents on the road.
Right.
Terrorists, terrible. Gun stuff, fucking terrible. But when you're just comparing numbers, it's the accidents, the road accidents.
Right.
That's the thing that's killing us most. Then maybe it's our food and our guns and that, not getting along and this kind of shit and our gods and stuff.
Right.
That's all a problem. Gods and guns and all this shit. That's all a problem.
We can solve those in the tasting rooms of the world.
Absolutely, Josh. I believe that with my whole heart, man. But I would, because I've spent most of my adult life in
in
bars.
the tasting rooms of those towns.
Yeah. Hanging out, drinking with drunks, and buying drunks a drink. That's been a lot of my experience, especially in my early art life.
Well, maybe we should wrap up with a couple of things that I think, and maybe the first thing I would like to ask you, Andy, as a guy who's integral to the Longmont story, anything that we haven't talked about, are there issues that you are concerned with on a personal level, just as a Longmont resident, things that you care about? The ones that we see come up in these town halls and these forums at the tables when you're meeting folks early in the morning is, of course, oil and gas.
Yep.
Is, of course, access to water, transportation, jobs, affordable housing. These are some of the things that we hear about time and time again.
Water's on my radar. Water in the future is on my radar.
What's your
talking about buying
water?
Right?
Yeah.
I think
and
I'm
the
in favor
and the
of
Windy Gap.
Yeah,
the whole story.
To me, it seems like that's a good idea, but it doesn't make sense to invest in all this water if we're going to let motherfuckers frack it up and then poison it all. Right. What's the point of making the investment if we're going to let people poison it? So these things, to me, are connected. So that's the important factor there.
I think that we have to dig in on that, and I'm with you. I agree. Someone smarter than me said that this town is wonderful now because of wise decisions made by people before us. And our town is privileged and set up for success now because of taxes and rates that people before us have paid.
Right.
And one of those is, one of the most important parts and aspects and tools of a town is its water. And so I, too, am in favor of supporting Windy Gap. And, the voters spoke. The city staff and experts said that we could get by as a city at 6,000 acre-feet of water. The voters said that they're willing to approve up to 10,000 acre-feet of water. And the city council moved with kind of split the difference at 8,000 acre-feet of water. And I too think that having too much water will never be a problem in our town. We're in the middle of the desert. We don't know how we're going to continue to grow, and it's like the number one insurance policy we have is water.
If nothing else, we can always sell it off
later. So
I
think we grab it now. And I sat in Harold Dominguez's office and said, what about selling it, leasing it out? And he said that, yes, that's possible, but actually right now there are ordinances in place to make that difficult because sometimes when you sell water to Frederick, Firestone, Erie, it opens up the door for encroachment. And
because it
what
would
makes
give up ground.
Right. So what makes us so special? There was a sticker a number of years ago. I don't know if you ever saw it. It said, "Don't Broomfield Longmont."
Nope, did not see that.
And so this speaks to we don't want to lose our identity as a town, and so encouraging our surrounding neighborhoods to encroach upon us might be something that we want to be careful doing. But it is possible. We enter into contracts that last 20 years relating to water, so it can be changed down the line. But I think what is misunderstood about Windy Gap, folks jump to, we're sourcing this water to sell to oil and gas. And actually, it's in our Constitution and in a state ordinance that we can't.
Good.
And so I think that is something that just requires more education and more and better informing the voters.
I knew they weren't allowed to sell it to them, but if the fracking dudes have a spill or infect groundwater,
now that's a different ballgame.
We're just fucked, So
right.
It's like if we're gonna invest in procuring groundwater for ourselves, we can't allow it to be poisoned,
Amen.
because then we've ruined our own investment.
Right.
And we don't make any money from the poisoning.
That's
you know what I mean?
Nope.
So
definitely
if
don't.
we did, we could talk about it. You know, oh, you poisoned us, but you pay us $1 billion, million, whatever. You know, so those things seem like they're connected.
And I think that's so we've got the water.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's talk about oil and gas. This is something that, you know, I go to bed and I wake up a Democrat, and I drive a hybrid, and I just bought a second hybrid.
You can add them together and have a normal car again.
Hey, listen, you buy a Highlander, which is, of course, the ultimate family car. You buy a Highlander V6 and a Highlander V6 with a hybrid engine.
Wait a minute. You have two Highlanders?
I'm about to.
Josh, there can only be one Highlander.
I got them both. and you know what? You know the difference between the Highlander traditional engine and the Highlander hybrid engine?
One's going to cut off the other one's head. That's
and it's the hybrid. It's the hybrid engine. The hybrid engine's faster.
Really,
dude. I'm not saying that I'm gunning any green light.
No further questions.
If anyone ever turns their nose up to a down to a hybrid,
yeah.
You don't know. You haven't been in one, man.
No, I've
the
got
Teslas. These battery powered engines fly off the line.
Dude, my buddy Peter, my filmmaking buddy. He's got one of these quiet little cars. You you get in and you think he's about to start the car, and he starts driving.
And he starts going. You're already moving.
And he does drive fast.
Does he?
No, but if you're officers, if you're listening, I'm not telling you Peter's last name, motherfuckers. I'm no rat. But he does go fast in that quiet little motherfucker.
Does he?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, anyway, so we're believers. We support environmentally conscious and sensitive directions anytime possible. We got compost in our front lawn.
Yeah.
And so
I love that system in Longmont.
Me too.
Yeah, that's so cool.
I'd love to see it become, I think with a number of years, it'll become less foreign, more normal. More people will continue to opt into it.
Yeah.
And I think eventually that'll be the way of the future.
Yeah, we really like it at this house. We have a garden in the back. We use that for.
Amen.
I want to bug you about another thing. Homelessness.
Yeah, man.
That's a real thing in our community. It's been in the uptick, right?
Yeah. I think nationwide.
We got like an arts district, a creative district downtown or whatever, for people to walk around and appreciate art or whatever. But like also, people are living down there,
right? Because
something's wrong,
right?
Somewhere in the system, What do we do about that on a governmental level?
That's a great question, Andy, and. I think the first thing is to recognize that it is a national problem. I think we're seeing homelessness and transient communities challenge our neighbors around Colorado and beyond.
Yeah, not just Longmont.
And certainly, as a guy who drives to 1265 Boston Avenue every day, which is left hand, all we got to do is jump over the little berm, walk down the greenway that's right there, and I see a variety of camps along the way, and I did that just yesterday. But, I think the solutions... I don't know if we have the right solution yet, and if you have the solution, I look forward to hearing it.
Well, I don't pretend to know.
I've asked the leaders of our town what they think the solution is, and I've heard a lot of similar answers, and I think it'll be a couple of things. One, we had a big change happen here in the last year, and that is the forces at B, the organizations who are serving those already that are homeless and transient community the most. First of all, we have to keep supporting them. Mm-hmm. The Our Center, Hope for Longmont, Safe Haven. These are organizations that are feeding and housing and keeping warm those who are in a tough spot. So we need to keep supporting those organizations. The county as a whole took on a new endeavor where gone are the free meals. If you're gonna go to a shelter or get a meal, get a shower at any of our surrounding Boulder County neighborhoods, you have to be registered. So there's none of this slipping through the cracks. You have to be registered, and it's traced and tracked. And now you are at least trackable and a part of a system. And the next step, I asked Mike Butler, what does he think the answer is? And so what that is,
seems like an interesting idea.
There's a little bit of a tough love component to it.
Sure.
And, when push comes to shove, the Our Center is going to give a bag lunch to someone. When folks are going to be fed, But actually, the change of direction, Hope, for example, who historically has given out meals every night, have moved away from that. And with the issue with that is, if we continue to give away meals and don't seek any accountability from those who are in our town, it just waves a flag high in the sky that says, "Hey, there's free stuff here in Longmont.
Right.
There's free meals and there's free place to stay without any accountability."
Show love, but in a motivating way.
Exactly.
That gives them some gas in their engine to do something.
Getting them registered and looking for opportunities to get these folks engaged. Earn your meal.
Yeah.
You don't get a free meal. I don't get a free meal.
Yep.
Put in a couple hours at the Hour Center. Put in a couple hours serving the community. If we find ways to activate and engage these folks, then I think the whole picture starts to come together.
That's a really beautiful idea. Really, if they're in a system, we can say, we want to give you free meals, but we can't give you free meals forever.
Right.
So, because nobody can afford that. Not forever, ever.
Right.
Can't afford that. So it's after a while, maybe you could check in over here and carry some stuff over from
help a couple of ladies.
Whatever it is.
It has to be compassionate.
Hold a sign at the fucking, wear this vest and hold this fucking sign, whatever it is, And now that you've logged a couple hours doing that, golly, here's another meal. You know what I mean? That makes sense.
What the answer isn't to just, have a cop drive through Roosevelt Park and keep kicking them out. The answer isn't to walk the St. Vereen corridor and kick them out of the camps.
Take their blankets.
Because what ends up happening is it's survival. They just find the next place.
Yeah.
And so,
or they don't survive. You fucking take their shit away from them in the wintertime. Right. Maybe they don't survive or whatever. We don't want to live with that in this community. That's not who we are,
Right. So I think it's the solutions will be. I don't think there is one solution that's going to cure it all, and I look forward to talking with those experts who dig deeper into that and turning to them for advice and turning to them for guidance. I think, one, we need to recognize that homelessness doesn't respect borders. So folks in Longmont that are homeless in Longmont don't stay in Longmont.
Right.
Folks who are homeless in Boulder and Lafayette and Louisville don't stay there. It's about finding the next opportunity. So that's the first thing. We need to recognize that it doesn't have borders. It's going to take a team effort. The municipalities are going to have to work together. The Hour Center.
I've never considered that. That's an interesting way to think about it.
The one concern has been that we're seeing a lot of folks leave a shelter in Boulder and catch the bus up to Longmont. And that we're seeing this kind of flooding of it. And I asked Edwina Salazar from the Hour Center if she sees that. And she said she doesn't think as much, actually. So I think first recognizing that it's going to take, a multi-town partnership. So that's one thing. Two, I think getting folks registered and being able to identify and know and track who's registered. And if they're not registered, get them registered before they get that free meal. And then look for ways to engage and hold folks accountable in a compassionate way. There will be meals, but you gotta earn it to some extent. I don't know what that exactly looks like at this moment.
It's a partnership,
Sure, we're doing it together.
We're feeding you. You could feed in a little bit, and a lot of these people, have mental instability.
And then you hit the final part.
Right.
I think the final piece I was going to touch on is better knowing who they are, and a big chunk of them have mental illness, and so we need to address mental illness.
Yep.
And I think that's also a nationwide epidemic, but certainly in our own town, addressing the needs of our mentally ill is a big, failure on our behalf. Some folks, and then when you remove mentally ill folks, and you remove folks who are employed but underemployed, folks who are actually working 40 hours a week, but they don't have enough money to afford that apartment here in town. They're couch surfing. They're kind of taking it night by night. So maybe those folks just need a little extra nudge to get more stable. They just need a couple weeks in a shelter with meals, get their feet on the ground, and get back on the righter side. And you remove those folks, and then you get down to the cold, hard numbers of folks who are actually chronically homeless in Longmont is relatively few, and those are the folks that where the system is failing, and we need to address that.
Interesting. Like I say, I can't claim to be an expert on any of this shit.
Yeah.
I'm a total hobbyist. I'm interested in our city because I love our community. I think that's where you're coming from too. But I sure am glad to hear that you're getting involved in this new way. How
Thanks.
can people get involved with your campaign?
Ah, man. Thanks for asking, Andy. So the best way, and the best place you should start is go to joshforlongmont.com. But only do that if you've registered to vote. So, I mean, whether voting for me or for anyone else, it's time to be a part of our story. It's time to be a part of democracy in action. It's time to vote. Even if you're not going to vote for me, register to vote anyways. The turnout, especially on these off-year elections, is like just nauseatingly low.
It's low, man.
And listen, I don't know if you can complain if you don't get involved.
That's my opinion.
And so I say to everyone who's listening, whether they are writing me off as a guy who's worked for a brewery and throws parties, or if they, are on board, you need to get involved. Vote, even if it means voting for the other guy.
Yeah.
But let's presume you've hung in this long. You're at least curious. Check out my website, joshforlongmont.com. Make me a friend on Facebook. Every once in a while I put up stuff on Facebook. I think you'll be finding me at Mac's Place on Saturday mornings at from 8:30 to 10 between now and the election, and presumably after that. So I am, fiercely loyal to Longmont. I'm fiercely loyal to the people. And then let's see, we have a couple different opportunities. I would say just look at the Times Call or track my website. You'll see there's a forum coming up at Skyline High School. There's a forum coming up hosted by Sustainable Resilient Longmont and EcoCycle. So there's a couple opportunities to meet and greet with your candidates, and the more you know, the more empowered you'll be.
Oh, that's a really important note, folks. Don't be fucking stupid. Learn some shit. Become powerful. Josh, thanks for coming on my little show, man.
Oh, I love it, dude. It's an honor, and I can't believe I have sat on this couch twice now.
I know.
In Saturday Night Live, if you attend 5, if you become a member of the 5 Club, then you get a coat, you get a jacket.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's like, I think it's like velvet, and it's maroon. So we do a couple more of these. I'm gonna walk out of here with a velvet coat.
We could talk about that.
Okay, maybe a robe.
No, a robe would be good.
Yeah.
A robe would be really classy. All right. Well, when is election day, Josh?
February 27th. Thank you, Andy. The ballots go out February 5th, so you'll see those the 6th or 7th. Turn them in early, but election day is the 27th. And I hope you join me on this journey to elevate this town that we love so much.
Well, folks, I'm voting for Josh. I don't usually tell people how I vote, but I'm voting for Josh. He's my friend, and I believe in him, and that's why he's on this goddamn show. That's who I recommend you vote for. I'll see you at another show. Cheers.
Thank you very much for listening to this show. Contact me if you want to be a sponsor. If you want to hear more stuff like this, go to andyepler.com.